Hi, everyone. So thanks for your patience as we have been admitting people into the meeting room and gathering up all the speakers. I'm Marcus. I go by he, him pronouns. I'm wearing metal rim glasses. I'm wearing earrings on both sides of my ears, and I have short hair. I'm of Chinese descent and also a member of Softwall Studs. Thank you so much for joining us today for Putting Horizons, a conversation with independent publishers from Hong Kong, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur. So I think just to start off, I would be speaking more about the logistical and technical details about this meeting. This meeting and this event is being recorded and would be subsequently archived and disseminated for public release. If you have any issues with that, please email softwallstuds@gmail.com. And Softwall Studs is a collaborative project committed to establishing safe spaces for potentially sensitive issues, which might sometimes cause triggers. If anything that was raised during this meeting was a cause for concern, please do not hesitate to reach out to us either by email or on our Facebook. We also do not tolerate harassment, harmful or dehumanizing behavior or expression, including and not limited to racism, gender discrimination, classism, ableism, xenophobia. And if such behavior persists, moderators might have to remove the relevant parties. And we are also encouraging everyone to learn from each other and also challenge each other, but also be aware of the spaces you're taking up and not taking up within this discussion. So as mentioned in the program information, the talk will be held in English, but one of our presenters would be presenting in Cantonese with, so our presenter Siu Ding will be presenting in Cantonese, but with English live interpretation. So I think we are all here for this talk mainly to speak about independent publishing, but also kind of having this panel in a rather politically tumultuous time for the different cities that are represented in this talk, and to think about how social and political action overlaps and intersects in different ways with independent publishing, how the circuits of distribution of independent publishing also is a way of community forming, and publishing and independent publishing and its different modes of legibility in negotiation with different degrees of censorship. So I think I'm very happy to be sharing space with our awesome speakers from 3 different cities. And maybe I'll let Sam, who I'm co-moderating this session with, take over and introduce the speakers.
Hi, I'm Sam. I go by she and they, and I have short hair that's a bit tied up. My background is a living room, and it's sunny. I would like to introduce, or we're very happy that you guys are here. And as Marcus says, this is a way of learning about the shared activities that Zine Publishing does. And tactics are meant to expire, but I recognize the states of solidarity and community forming through individual acts of publishing, and how each of us do so would be worth learning and opening up to. And so we gather today, and we'll split this section into 2 spaces. So we will start with Hong Kong, and today we have Tiffany Sia from Speculative Place, Siu Ding from Softy Press, and Alvi from Pop and Zebra. And then we will take an intermission, which is 10 minutes, and we will...
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. So thanks for your patience as we have been admitting people into the meeting room and gathering up all the speakers. I'm Marcus. I go by he, him pronouns. I'm wearing metal rim glasses. I'm wearing earrings on both sides of my ears, and I have short hair. I'm of Chinese descent, and also a member of Softwall Studs. Thank you so much for joining us today for putting horizons a conversation with independent publishers from Hong Kong, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur. So I think just to start off, I would be speaking more about the logistical and technical details about this meeting. This meeting and this event is being recorded and would be subsequently archived and disseminated for public release. If you have any issues with that, please email softwallstuds@gmail.com. And Softwall Studs is a collaborative project committed to establishing safe spaces for potentially sensitive issues, which might sometimes cause triggers. If anything that was raised during this meeting was a cause for concern, please do not hesitate to reach out to us either by email or on our Facebook. We also do not tolerate harassment, harmful or dehumanizing behavior or expression, including and not limited to racism, gender discrimination, classism, ableism, xenophobia. And if such behavior persists, moderators might have to remove the relevant parties. And we are also encouraging everyone to learn from each other and also challenge each other, but also be aware of the spaces you're taking up and not taking up within this discussion. So as mentioned in the program information, the talk will be held in English, but one of our presenters would be presenting in Cantonese with so our presenter Siu Ding will be presenting in Cantonese, but with English live interpretation. So I think we are all here for this talk, mainly to speak about independent publishing, but also kind of having this panel in a rather politically tumultuous time for the different cities that are represented in this talk, and to think about how social and political action overlaps and intersects in different ways with independent publishing, how the circuits of distribution of independent publishing also is a way of community forming, and publishing and independent publishing and its different modes of legibility in negotiation with different degrees of censorship. So I think I'm very happy to be sharing space with our awesome speakers from 3 different cities. And maybe I'll let Sam, who I'm co-moderating this session with, take over and introduce the speakers.
Hi, I'm Sam. I go by she and they, and I have short hair that's a bit tied up. My background is a living room, and it's sunny. I would like to introduce, we're very happy that you guys are here, and as Marcus says, this is a way of learning about the shared activities that Zine Publishing does. And tactics are meant to expire, but I recognize the states of solidarity and community forming through individual acts of publishing, and how each of us do so would be worth learning and opening up to, and so we gather today. And we'll split this section into 2 spaces. So we will start with Hong Kong, and today we have Tiffany Sia from Speculative Place, Siu Ding from Softy Press, and Alvi from Pop and Zebra. And then we will take an intermission, which is 10 minutes, and we will focus on queer community orientation. And we are here with Joy and Worms on behalf of Queer Zinefest. They provide queer safe spaces for people coming of all ages. And we also have Kat Brogan from Kuala Lumpur, and similarly, they organize LGBT spaces physically and also through zine making. And I will start the session with introducing solidarity tactics while collecting zines for the AA collection. I would want to screen share something. So I have been collecting zines on the anti-ELAB movement for the past year, and as these publisher makes more polished publications and different iterations, I would like to revisit the rawness of the earlier zines last summer. The question we are discussing is how are independent, should this be bigger? How are independent zine makers using agency and tactics to express solidarity with the anti-ELAB movement in Hong Kong? First, this was my first zine in collecting. It's document of a movement and it's anonymously published, and I picked it up while doing a light logistics delivery. So the direct involvement in how one receives a zine, often face-to-face, given in small circulation, is part of its intervention. And this zine is more periodically published in 4 months, and it proves a micro archive of sharing truth together. So there is a timeline on what has happened thus far, and then the back would be a list of solidarity, and then in the middle it would be anonymous personal writings and contributions. So yeah, the zines document obsessively, compulsively of thus far, and they are identified as an anonymous body of what's happening over a specific identity. And the first tactic I would like to share is that resonates with Pop and Zebra Albi, which is very small, bite-sized microzines that are community-oriented in that gives like glossary and visceral context on what is happening in very specific dates. So this is a duo. One is they collaborate. This is Small Potato Do Stuff, and they collaborate virtually. The illustrator is from the UK, and the writer would be from Hong Kong, and it is available for download and used in rallies and also their social medias. And this type of language is important because the protest was very polarized. And there were a lot of tensions. So freelancers would actually use their own social media platform to give mental health and mutual aid and very specific protest security zines. And these were very portable and safe to carry around. And then, the social media and digital platform is parallel to the paper press. And sometimes it's more discreet, like how Tiffany uses her zines, and also Bo Zhang's zine for Aromantic, which is a virtual solidarity using porn tactics to carry a message through and consensual citations. So both in WeChat, Hong Kong became a very sensitive term. And even if your name had Hong or Kong, you would be blocked. And the way people circulated the zines was through vandalizing the newspaper and doodling the coverage for it to exist as kind of a dead body mass in their WeChat. So they do use censorship as a way to kind of show what is happening. And to be honest, through description, it lasts longer, and you can, like, names and cities can be distorted, but and rearranged again. So Hong Kong, the title Aromantic was translated 3 or 4 times through Google Translate to get this name. And similarly, being a Hong Konger was defying citizenship and nation, but more towards like a shared conscientiousness and ethnicity, and also a mutual support and a defiance from a police. That was the ideology circulated. And last, sometimes we create and by exhausting ourselves because we can't sleep. And I want to tackle the tune and personal photography that is evident in Siu Ding scenes, and also as this is a zine of the songs that were sung and some context to so yeah. And this is a journal of the anti-Sikh riots from a photographer that's collected the aftermath of it with her own photography for 10 years. And she gave an invitation to everyone to, or people who saw themselves as part of the city, to write citations and personal psychs to pair with these images. This is the invitation, and oops. And I end with intersubjective, and this was the invitation I sent to everyone. So scenes are intersubjectively written. They highlight the interweaving of social subjects, the relations to the connections with others. This observation is from the essay Themes, Half-Lives, and Afterlives on the Temporalities of Social and Political Change. These are her insights of collecting fan scenes for the third feminist waves, such as the Riot Girl, but I think the sense of community and exchange of letters and writers to develop an own truth applies. Scenes should be read in what they assert as a text. Community is performed and built through individual acts of writing. They are intersubjective and performative, personal, circulated non-centrally. Never the full picture or one picture, but an invitation to hold and share truth together. Thank you. Now. Now we have Tiffany, so I have this screen. And all of this is available in the library, and Tiffany's zine is available online too if you would like to check. Present.
Should I, is it on the camera or is it on the screen?
It's both.
Oh, okay. I'll just take off my mask. So I'm Tiffany Sia. Hi, everyone. My pronouns are she, her. For accessibility, I have short dark hair in a bob hairstyle, tied back partially, and I'm wearing a blue flower pattern shirt over a black shirt. I'm an artist, filmmaker, and founder of the experimental project space Speculative Place in Hong Kong. My practice, in a word, is centered on the role of an artist as a witness. Journalists and historians are essential agents in telling our current and past events, but it is also seeing films and reading that demonstrate the very necessity for artists to show our times too. The political artist, the affect stenographer, the oral historian, and the subversive witness. I use text, film, and video and performance in my work. I employ print media and digital culture as new ways of presenting information and smuggling critique. So as a diaspora artist, born in Hong Kong but moved to New York when I was 8 in 1996 before the handover, I'm invested in working through cross-cultural frameworks to challenge the limits and potentials between disparate geographies and knowledge systems, to see the limits and potentials of solidarity from afar. So in this brief presentation of my work, I'll just run through some of the ways in which I employ these means and tactics. My practice is very tied to text-based research, readings on political theory, affect theory, historical materialism, and film theory. And I use aesthetics of the illicit or the unseeable. So for instance, whether it's smut, like Salty Wet with the cover of Long Fu Pao, which is a Hong Kong softcore porn magazine, and this particular issue is from '89. Or staging leaks is another way that I employ the unseeable, and face pixelation. So I use these as means of potent sites for smuggling sensitive material intended to stage critical encounters. I wrote Salty Wet Ham Sup last year, beginning in April 2019, actually. So it's funny that it's also cataloged within the anti-extradition protest, because it was also written just a few months shy of it. I did finish it in June of 2019, and then it was published in July. But it's a zine that was published through Inpatient Press, somewhat as an accident, actually. It began as a Google Doc, assembling writing that I had over a few years and snapshots of current writing at the time. My publisher leaked it as part of a test run at an art book fair in the US, which was scary and encouraging and a bit strange. It's because I had been writing in the dark all of this time, and suddenly this piece of writing was out. So for those of you who don't know, Salty Wet in Cantonese is in English from Cantonese, it is the literal translation of the word for perverse or perverted. I'm interested in the way that redaction, what is unseeable and censored, both has the quality of seduction and taboo, and then the disappointment when you pick up Salty Wet and open it up to see text. And striking at something interesting between pornography and the illicit and the politically sensitive. So I'll sort of, okay. I'll scroll through Salty Wet, and so it's made up of screenshots and writings and excerpts. And it's also a work about geography in a sense, but it essentially challenges what political solidarity can look like from afar. I'll read one particular passage that I think probably expresses this the most. It is, hold on one second. Yet this tragedy of Hong Kong is not just its own history, but also that no one cares about this place. This goes back to the notion of the failed Axis Mundi. The whole world watched the handover and saw it as a pivotal moment in global history. Since then, people have tuned in for a small moment during the umbrella movement, and now we have the world's attention for as long as one can sustain holding attention for a place most have never been to and have no ties to. How might people be tricked into caring about Hong Kong? Image making is important to create attachments to a place one has never been to. In film, we experience landscapes and characters that shape the understanding of place, subtitled into intelligibility, even if what is portrayed is distorted or even fantastical. Better yet, pornography stages this relationship even more intimately, and along with all the ambivalent feelings of being a voyeur and participant, coupled with feelings of desire, dread, and the irreconcilable immateriality of the pornographic image. Second to falling in love with someone who lives here or belongs here lies a different connectedness of jerking off to images from a place far away to search Hong Kong in Pornhub. And I think, later the connections also, there's a lot of protest footage that was smuggled on porn sites like Pornhub. And then also the ways in which that was made, the connection was also made through the local porn site in Hong Kong that had a pop-up encouraging people to go out to participate in direct action. So that's Salty Wet, and then I'm currently writing Too Salty, Too Wet, which is being published through a series of leaks. So Salty Wet is a forthcoming follow-up that will be published later this year, and it's an ongoing leaky document. The first leak was released earlier this year and launched at Printed Matter as a poster-sized zine, which is what you see here. This is well, there's sort of front and back. There's no front really, but this is, yeah, it's a poster size. One is printed on one side and then the other one's printed on the other. And it was designed by my friend Virgil Taylor, who also goes by Fag Tips and is part of Pinko magazine. I'll be releasing another leak later next month, and I'm interested in this form of publishing as staging a leak as a kind of consensual discharge of information. Too Salty, Too Wet will be published under Speculative Place Press for the very reason that I wanted total control under these fast-changing circumstances on distribution and also form. I can't think of more impossible circumstances to write under, such as the current moment. So leaking is a kind of joke about that, kind of shifting senses of logic, space, time, and rules, what is permissible and what is not. How does one even write or publish anything with finality during this time? What I leaked earlier this year is in some ways, so what you see here, quite different from what will be released later this year, actually in a month. So, and to quote Elise Kushinsky, who's actually a former resident at Speculative Place and actually wrote part of her dissertation called The Potential of Leaks. Kushinsky writes, "The escape of a fluid, the leak also embodies more poetic tendencies, rupture, release, and disclosure." So that is that is Too Salty, Too Wet. And then this is from the upcoming leak that will come out soon. As you can see, I had to redact some things, which I don't know if I'll keep redacted for the actual, but a lot of my work is also about found archival imagery and footage, and thinking about what's already being circulated within the internet archives, such as Google Maps. And then this is a picture of myself, the author, pixelated. Hell is a Timeline is something else that's also not a zine, but certainly a text-based work of mine. It's a weekly performance series contributed to Home Cooking, which is this open source artist collective on that gathers around a Google Doc called Home Cooking. And so it uses reading. In Hell is a Timeline, I use reading aloud as a tool for pedagogy and care. Think about, so this is screenshots from Hell as a Timeline, where I'm reading to people political texts. Think of being read to by a parent or a guardian as a child as the first form of, teaching or care, and literacy as the first immaterial tool that we were given to make sense of the world on our own. In Hell is a Timeline, select texts surrounding a weekly topic are read aloud with a pixelated face. So they're intended to provoke a critical and materialist counters with our relentless and digital and real timelines. I'm inherently interested in how boring this format is, reading to people for 40 minutes, really dense political texts, and pushing someone on the verge of sleep is an exciting dare to smuggle information, and how some of these texts are I'm interested in how the format of these dense texts via Instagram Live is a process of thwarting, boring, or confusing detection, and creating a new channel for critique. So in a word, I'm interested in the ways that research and writing is a form of disclosure and revelation, and writing itself is a form of science fiction, willing a future yet to come.
Next we have Alfie, which will be, I'll turn off.
Hi, can you hear me? Oh, there is still. Is it better now? Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Abi. I go by the pronouns he and him. For accessibility, I have long hair because I haven't cut it in a few months because of the lockdown. If you have any suggestions on my hairstyle, please let me know. I'll come to the presentation. Hang on a second. And I am in Sam's house. This is her living room. She very kindly invited us because the library is closed due to the COVID situation. Let's see. Okay. So my work is more concept based. So I'm going to start with this quote by Alice Walker. She's a social activist, and it kind of resonated with me. The activism is a rent for living on this planet, which I thought is very profound and at the same time very, very true. If you think about it, our activism kind of starts right when we are like kids, and we don't want to eat a certain kind of vegetable, or I don't, as we grow up, and then we go start forming opinions about what we like, what we don't like, and then we proceed to school, and we don't want to do homework, and then we proceed to college and stuff like that. So that brings me to the students in the Occupy protest and the protest in general. So my first interaction with Hong Kong protest was back in 2014 during the Umbrella movement. I used to visit those sites at that time because I heard a lot about the way they organized everything, and it was beautifully managed. Students used to live in those tents. They used to do homework over there. They also even had the mail delivered to some of those addresses. If you can see, like you can see room number 3 over here, and then some guy is also mentioning that don't disturb me, and otherwise you'll have your spring pocket barbecued. He's very, make no mistake what spring pocket is over there. So, and it was fantastic. Everything seemed very, very well managed. They even had free Wi-Fi, so that was another reason I used to frequent that place. The movement kind of lasted for about 77 days. I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware of what Occupy, the umbrella movement was. So I'm just going to, it's important to know the background of all of this because that's what influences my work. Everything, I mean, that protest, I think Hong Kongers have set a benchmark in protesting because the way they manage everything, and who apologizes for inconvenience, and they make sure that after the protests are done, they clean up everything. They're so responsible. But most importantly, what struck chord with me was that these students are so aware of what their rights are and what kind of responsibilities they have, and more importantly, what kind of future they want to live in, and they try to do something about it. I mean, things like this. When I visited the site, I found this exchange between two strangers that one person says, you should, if you are so democratic, then try to, if you disagree, try to remove this banner. And somebody went on and actually gave an explanation that how it should be. This presentation is available, so I think you can read it later. It's a beautiful exchange. Fast forward to 2019, protests returned after the proposed extradition bill amendment. There was a lot of things were much different this time. There was a lot more unprecedented action, and that basically brought people. I'm going to play some videos here so we can have a quick idea about. And if you look at it, how beautifully everything is managed. There is no one leader. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do. There's an ambulance coming in, the crowd, and everybody moves, lets it pass, and then they get back to the hospital. So it's incredible. They're very, very focused. They know exactly what they're out there of they don't want to create any problem for anybody else. And then, so I tried to add a lot of imagery, because that's how I kind of that's what inspires me. My design studio is called Pop and Zebra because it's part of the pop is basically the influence of popular culture, and the zebra is for my wife's African descent. She was born and raised in Africa, Tanzania, Africa. And together we managed the studio called Pop and Zebra. So the 2019, since last year, there were a lot of images that kind of stuck with me. These are all the things that I've witnessed personally. The Hong Kong Way, the riot, the tear gas, children participating in the protest. There is another video here. This is not, I'm not trying to encourage anybody or imply anything here. It's just an observation because this is what I see, and that's what influences my work. So all your the barricades, again, extremely ingenious. The ways they manage to use material together. There was a lot of these blue laced water that used to be sprayed around to disperse protesters, and this is an image of one of the trees that was caught in the action. People who were stained with that water. This is a scene from the airport, a mother and child going through the signages that were put up on one of the bridges in Admiralty. This is this was, I think I'm going to skip this. There was another video that I was at one of the sites one evening, and this is what happened. This is in Prince Edward. Again, this is not to pick sides. It's about an observation. I have seen what I've seen, and I am sharing that with everybody. This was the Prince Edward MTR station after that event that happened inside the MTR. A lot of people have lost their lives because of these protests, which is unfortunate, but people don't forget. Hong Kongers pay their respect at every possible opportunity. They try to preserve whatever material that has been put out there. And then this one was particularly interesting. Among the actual protests, there is a lot of these little micro protests that are happening. If you see, there was on one of the Lennon walls, somebody wrote Hong Kongers stand as one, then someone went on and canceled the Hong Kongers and they wrote Chinese. Somebody went on and canceled it and wrote Hong Kongers. And so that's a protest within the protest that is happening that we usually sometimes miss out. But if you visit Lennon walls, there's a lot of such material out there. Then there was one of the walls had this Pepe, which was made out of Post-its. Then somebody comes and removes it next day. Then somebody comes and makes it again. So these are all little protest within protest that is happening. Of course, this is also, I feel, this kind of protest because somebody is like, no, I don't care about the protest. I want to take my picture first. This is a sign that how focused the protests are. I mean, there is a DBS bank, and somebody has written on the bank outside that don't worry, we are not going to damage because it's a Singapore bank. It's okay. We know what we are doing. Another sign of a protest within a protest that there is a. This is during the Hong Kong Way. You can see taxis carrying the flag, the Chinese flag, while Hong Kongers are trying to make a human chain. Just a second. Should I mute this one? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. All right. So I'm gonna quickly move on to the zine part of it. That how all of this has influenced me. So starting last year, I started making a few zines. So far, I've made about 10 of them. These are all related to the Hong Kong protests, and my work is very much influenced by visual culture and events that are happening around me. So because I've been out, I've frequented these sites and events and protests, I have collected a lot of information which I try to use in trying to create to share a message of what is happening. Right or wrong, I'll leave it to the viewer to decide. So these are over the last year, I've made about 300 zines that I'd given away to different people, different countries, and even I still stand by that if at all you need any zine that I've made, and if these are all, last year it was all free, now I've put them on my online shop. If at all you cannot pay for it for any reason, you can have it for free, just let me know. My contact details will probably be available through this exchange, so please write to me. So I'm picking a couple of zines which you can see that how it was made, or a little bit of detail about what the zine was. So the Hong Kong way I try to replicate, how can I show something in paper that I've seen. So this was a zine that was, it's an extendable zine which also reverses as a banner. During the Occupy movement, there were these large, long banners being displayed on hills. So the reverse of that kind of becomes a Free Hong Kong Revolution of a times kind of a banner. I don't know if I can continue having this quote or this slogan anymore, but this is what it was done earlier. So, and very quickly, so this is another one which is Yellow Object. It's was based on an event that happened in Yuen Long, where police was trying to beat up a person, and they claimed it was a yellow object, not a person. So this is a reversible zine that lets people know the difference between what is an object and what are people who the difference between that. So. And then the last one that I picked was an unlawful assembly. There was a law that says more than 3 people gathering would be penalized and would be arrested. And so I made, and I came across a lot of Carrie Lam illustrations throughout these protests and at different Lenin walls. So I collected them, I put them together and made a zine out of it. And these, the strips that you see are actually the tapes that you will find at protests, which are discarded after the protest is done. The police uses this. So this is a piece of actual part of the protest. A lot of people have different ways of expressing solidarity. Mine is, at the moment, through zines. I will continue working on ideas that I have based on how things pan out. And why do I think it is important? Because if at all you want to bring about any change, then I think it's important to step towards it. So you're leaving with these images that shows that I was where all I've been, what all I've seen, kind of a thing. So I'm going to hand it back to Sam. Thank you.
Siu Ding's next.
Yeah, okay, Siu Ding's next. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Second.
So Siu Ding will be conducting her presentation in Cantonese, and like okay, we're going to go.
Hi, I'm Siu Ding. Hi.
係啊，
係長頭髮，同埋格仔長裙咁樣。我係女仔。
So hi, this is Siu Ding. She has long hair and she's wearing a checkered shirt. And she goes by she and her pronouns.
咁我係做先嘅同埋咧我都有幫其他人出版啦。咁我嘅出版社咧就叫做 Softly Press。
So I make zines and I also help people publish zines. My zine is called Softy Press.
咁喺上年開咁本嚟咧我哋個出版社咧主要咧就係出版一啲獨立啦關於身體啦同埋一啲抗爭嘅嘢嘅。
So previously our zines are focused on independence and some regard and also focus on body and protest.
因為我覺得關於身體嘅嘢咧，其實身體除咗係即係本身個身體啦，其實咧都係可以用嚟抗爭嘅時候，都係一個好重要嘅元素咯。
Okay, so the body is very important and a core element when it comes to protest.
咁上年咧就係我參加社會運動已經有10年啦。咁咧但係反送中運動裏面咧喺7月之前咧就已經有人自殺。咁咧當時咧我係覺得好傷心啦。然後咧就覺得作為一個藝術家咧係必須要用藝術咧去回應社會事件啦，同埋令到大家團結起上嚟嘅。咁於是咧我就
Oh, sorry. So Siu Ding has been resisting for 10 years, and there has been suicides, and she wants to use scenes to get the truth.
去用結集個先嚟表達去表達翻嗰個去團結翻啲人嘅力量咯，希望發表過去10年做社會運動嘅經驗。
She compiled this showing her participation in the civil movements for 10 years to want to unify and support the protests happening now. And yeah, it's for a sense of unity.
咁呢個裏邊咧就係一啲10年裏面唔同嘅社會運動嘅一啲場景啦。咁咧又可以見到咧社會運動咧其實係由一啲藝術家開始啦，一啲個人開始啦，然後咧去到臨尾嘅時候咧就已經係好多唔識得嘅人都團結起上嚟一齊參加啦。咁我哋可以
So these are photography of the past protests, and it began very student-led, but then slowly it turned more anonymous and for a mass body population.
咁我借住咧出版呢啲先啦，然後咧就希望咧連結起大家啦，然後咧我就將呢啲先咧帶咗去唔同嘅地方嗰度做展覽啦。咁咧希望參加即係做藝術家或者就算一啲普通嘅人咧，都可以透過咧去自己書寫呢個嘅自己關於自己城市嘅一啲歷史咧，然後去回應翻自己個地方嘅一啲議題嘅，唔單即係除咗香港嘅議題之外咧，唔同嘅地方嘅人都可以自己去參與咯。
So using zine as a self-expression medium, she sees that as a way of participating and unifying people together, and not only the Hong Kong protests, but locally and in your own resource as well. And she presented it in different places.
咁我就帶咗佢哋去台北啦，去加拿大啦，同埋仲有去到馬來西亞嘅。
So she brought these zines with her to Taipei, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Montreal.
咁我簡單咁樣 show 下呢啲刊物啦。
She will simply show just the tactility of the zine.
咁呢個咧就係獻俾一啲為即係做社會運動為我哋而犧牲嘅人嘅。
So this calendar is for those who have sacrificed their lives participating in this movement, to remember them and grieve for them.
咁除咗咧我自己做嘅呢啲即係呢啲先之外咧，咁我因為我鼓勵咧唔同嘅人都參與去創作，令到即係可以為自己同埋有一個用一個個人嘅嚟發聲啦。咁咧我都有幫一啲記者咧就出版咗即係印咗一啲咧係關於抗爭者嘅一啲愛情故事，呢個就係其中即係一本係免費派發。
Okay, I would also want to encourage many people to make scenes, and this is made for different reportage on romance in the movement, and it is different articles, and it is circulated freely.
最後咧，我係有幫另一啲譬如畫家啦去出版都係一啲關於抗爭嘅畫法啦。
I help. The last thing I want to present is I help publish this watercolor catalog for the protest by a geek. Yes. And this is the most recent book, and it's the reporter's photography. That's about it. So now we have an intermission. Thank you.
Yes, so now we have an intermission, a 5 minutes intermission. So a toilet break, get yourself a cup of coffee or drinks. We'll be back at 4:28 with Queer Zinefest and Brogan. Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. Hope you had a good break. So I think now we are moving to Queer Zinefest and from Singapore, and Brogan from Kuala Lumpur. And thank you for the sharing, Siu Ding, Abi, Tiffany, and Sam. I think truly we saw a lot of ways of how socio-political issues and conditions could be expressed and can take on kind of different manifestations. And I guess what's interesting about this talk is also about finding kind of intersections between these cities, especially on the level of politics and social issues. So I think moving to Queer Zinefest, I think they might have other kind of a different kind of repertoire of expression and doing politics, which I'm very excited to hear about. So I'm going to pass the time over to Joy and Worms.
We are still silence. No, we are not silent.
No, we're not.
Okay.
Hi, I am Joy. I go by she, they pronouns. I'm wearing a very colorful abstract shirt and I have long hair with glasses. I'm quite tan. I'm in the same space.
Hello. Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Worms. I use they, them pronouns. And did we say we organized Queer Zinefest?
No, we didn't.
Oh, we organized Queer Zinefest. Sorry, I never described myself. My hair is long and black. I'm wearing a shirt that I screen printed. I have baby earrings in my ears. And I'm wearing red lipstick. So the two of us, we founded and we run Queer Zinefest, which started out as a queer zine fest, but has since sort of blossomed into also a community of like queer creators and young people in Singapore, which is quite cute, lah.
Yeah, so it's like we've hosted kind of zine making events, like kind of satellite to like our main queer, like the inaugural kind of like zine fest, which like kind of follows the very traditional, like we have booths highlighting queer creators, and then it's like our own little like mini economy. We find spaces that usually have often like given like let us use their space for free, and it shows that like the solidarity within like public places in Singapore. So I think, and we usually kind of like combine it with I guess like performance aspects as well, in the way that like for the first Queer Zine Fest, we had some like workshops and kind of educational aspects of it.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, and for like the future ones, we kind of had a spoken word session as well, because I think like at least for zine, sometimes a lot of it is reactive. It doesn't come from a bubble. So when we're trying to encourage like our other queer folk to kind of interact and also engage with like material that sometimes almost like Singapore, I think, makes almost your queerness seem like a separate part of you sometimes, because you have your work, you have your job, and then you turn it off, and then you go and explore those parts of your identity. But I think like Queer Zinefest, we kind of try to like make it like a whole part of you as well. Like during this place, it's like the safe space kind of makes you realize that this is kind of a utopia that can be achieved like within a set amount of time. Yeah, so you want to continue?
I think we will start sharing our screen.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know how to do that though, so you will have to do that. We are just two aunties trying to make this work.
Okay.
Think it's happening. Yes. What are we presenting to everyone?
Can you guys see the screen? Thumbs up if yes. Okay, great. Okay, awesome. Okay,
spicy stuff.
all right.
Yeah.
Go.
Okay. Okay, this is our logo. Okay, we should have had this when we talked. Never mind. Next. What is this for?
This is just like our
This is
zine
just our
collection.
zine.
Yeah, also just for accessibility's sake. So this is
yes.
our slides are all gonna have like a background of people making zines. It's this little like film grainy photo of just like a lot of zines and a lot of knees. And the next photo is photos of our zine collections, because both of us kind of like have our own entrance into zines. We did go to school together, but we were never like friends during then. But then we got to know each other because Worms wanted to create a zine fest, and they were working with a spoken word poet here in Singapore, and they wanted and so then I came aboard as the designer and kind of like started doing this a lot more with the team. And I think both of us have kind of been maybe the core members, but then Queer Zinefest is like kind of like our goal is to make it not like that we are one group operating like to serve the community, but the idea that we are the community, and like we often try to encourage like different people who are attending to kind of like participate with us or help out in the next iteration. And often like what that individual can bring to the table is usually what we can kind of like create, like sculpt the event around next.
I think like when we were doing the first one, we were saying that we want this idea of like sort of like a decentralized leadership of like this sort of stuff that people can come and see that like, oh, these like children are running an event, so if they can do it, we also can do it. And then and it's been nice to see how like how we've started like we have started having conversations with like other young queer people who I don't know, like young queer people so powerful, like they're just doing things. And then it's nice to have like this just growing community of like young people making things happen.
Like I think like people sometimes get in contact with us like they're from universities or even not within a school setting, just like young individuals who are trying to organize. And I think because Queer Zinefest was entirely crowdfunded, and I don't think we've had to kind of like out of pocket. It's kind of just like a lot of solidarity and like the community wants this to exist. So, we feed into each other, we support each other, and we share information, we share resources. So I guess like next few slides will be showing like what we've done.
No.
Oh, that's wrong. Okay, so
Yeah,
so Worms kindly collected this together for just a little brief, like
just a little dip
snippets
into zines. So I mean, like, thinking credits go to Ng Yisheng, who's like a local gay local poet, who was mentioning a lot of Singapore's queer organizing and movement building happened through writing and through especially through very small groups of writers gathering together and sharing their writing, sharing their poetry, their prose, and how a lot of that was collected in zines. So this is a picture of this is on the left is a picture of the Invisible Manuscript by Alfian Saad. Photo credits are Harsha. Ooh,
Y'all
okay.
got photo credits from Harsha. Okay.
Wow. Okay. Harish Sharma is a local playwright. So you can see how sort of like all of like the writers, all the gay writers sort of like were just meshed together. So the image on the left is when Alfian Saad first came up with this poetry anthology, which is a book of gay poetry, and at the time it's very ziny. It's like, I think, is that Times New Roman? I don't know, but it's just like an inkjet printed binding of like is a very simple zine, and he distributed it via Signal, which was like a gay network at the time, to just like close friends and some colleagues, and that was back in, I want to say, oh no, I don't have to want to say. I can read off this. Well, very very long-winded today. But that was in 1999, and back then it was so much harder for people to be out. But there were these like little words that were kind of like being passed around. And then in 2012, the Invisible Manuscript was actually published by a publisher. So the image on the right is the published. I mean, what is published, but published version by a publishing house. And yeah, so it's very interesting to see how like, someone who's now a very prominent queer writer, how you can see how this one collection of poetry sort of charts, I guess not our growth, but our journey as queer people. Aha! And then these are, sorry, I'm talking a lot. You can talk. Do you want to talk about Swing Mag?
I mean, briefly, I guess. I mean, you might have more context with the creators, but Swing Mag is also a local kind of ground-up publication of like young folks as well. They have interviews, and these are in very beautifully bound books with like, there's a lot of like very excellent photographers now with the age of like digital democracy in a way. But yeah, so this is they were also it's another group like organizers and publishers who are coming together. So they I think they're also kind of like creating their own network, because I know they reached out to me for a commission as well, because I'm an illustrator. Okay. Yeah, so but like I think like there is this kind of like world building in a way for like independent publishing, and they've also tabled at our fair. Do you want to say anything else?
Yeah, I mean, like, so this is interesting because I guess this was both of their zines came out in 2018, and they have a very like documentary style approach to zines. So most of their zines are interviews. So on the left, there's an image of the zine Dave Talks to Me About Racism and Disappointment in the Gay Community. And below, they state where the interview took place at Lower Seletar Reservoir on the 28th of July 2018. And so that was an interview with just one person about his experiences as a brown gay man in Singapore. So the image next to it is a quote from the zine that says, and I think when those words escaped his mouth, I think it was a very sobering realization of the brown gay man's place in Singaporean society. On the right is another zine that they've made. It's called My Name is Veron. And so the image on the right is the cover of the zine, which is two pictures of Veron, where you can't see her face, but you can see like sort of like the rings that she's wearing and like her hair, and you can sort of see that she's wearing makeup. And that zine is an interview with Veron, who is a Malay Muslim drag queen. So they do very interesting like documentary style, like I was gonna say close reading, but that's not the word I'm looking for, but like zoom into people.
Yeah, like kind of like profiles. I think it's interesting, like you mentioned it, because I think like this almost acts as if like it's a profile picture. It's like kind of a traditional, and I think like that's like the beauty of like the zine format. It's kind of like it doesn't leave a digital footprint, because like everything's very discoverable nowadays. So this kind of still adds a very comprehensive snapshot of like a person's story without having to reveal more than needs to be said.
Yeah. Yay. Okay, next we have like zines that are a bit more like activist zines. So we have the Aromantic Manifesto on the left, and on the right, the Local Rebel. I've only really managed to squeeze in their title pages and then one page from an Aromantic Manifesto, which I can't read because actually it is very small.
I can read. Romanticism is difficult to imagine in our society, but this is not a reason to dismiss it. Queerness has never been about the convenience of normality. A capitalist model of society based on heteronuclear family results in a competitive world where it is every family, whether biological, organizational, or national, for themselves. What if we instead designed our infrastructure around an aromantic vision of society? It must be a social movement in a way romance could never be. And the point of aromanticism is that it cannot be done alone. We don't have all the answers, but we hope to explore them with you.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, I mean, like not in comparison, but it's just a different type of zine, I guess, a different approach to zine making. That's very like, this is our manifesto. The Local Rebel is also, they no longer do things. But when they started out as one of the only, I think, feminist zines that were explicitly talking about queerness and like what it means to be a woman, what it means to be intersectional, back in like maybe 2014, 2015.
Which is around when like kind of not golden age but like a lot of like independent Singapore publishing that was making stories about Singapore, I think was kind of like having a lot of independent, like in the independent community, like attention. So I think this is kind of like came out at a time that was very like a lot of us were looking very locally also, because a lot of like our references to like colonialism or queerness, if we don't have access to local kind of news or articles and stuff like that, like usually it's from abroad. So I think this kind of gives a very good encapsulation from like local writers and like contributors.
Yeah, that's true. All right, next we have like more like confessional personal zines. Okay, you can talk about these because I feel like these are closer to you than
I thought those are you.
But that's Esther.
Okay, I'll talk about Esther. Esther's basically a friend I met actually in the capacity of an illustrator. But basically it was really amazing because I think we didn't realize like we were both from the queer community until I was like we were tabling together for Art Book Fair. And then I was like, oh guys, can I put up this poster? And then she's like, oh cool. And then like she's like, oh, can I table with y'all? Or like I asked her, I can't remember. But basically she had this, and then it was like, oh, like we recognize each other, you know. So I think it's just like, and hers is a very fun zine about having crushes and like just having this visual media of like girls having crushes in front of me, right, as printed material from a local person in a kind of like in an illustration style that, you know, like I'm very accustomed to comics. It's like, it's so refreshing and like unusual, even though it really shouldn't be, because like all of this media, like Singapore has a very delightful history of like pulping books that have like gay animals or something, or like just removing these things from our libraries, and like our we just don't have that kind of like, you know, you have to look for it and like in elsewhere, otherwise it just comes across as like, or like sex or smut that, you know, you have to like, you get access to as like an adult or like or a teen who knows too much, but then like basically it's yeah, it's just very wholesome, very refreshing. You know, there's this kind of like nuclear family model that Singapore really like activates, because, you know, you got to get married in a hetero family, and then you get, it's tied in with your economics, it's tied in with the stress of like going to school and being like, how is my future going to look like? So I think a lot of these confessional stuff as zines is very cathartic, and also like you kind of recognize each other's anxieties for the future in Singapore. Yeah, you can talk about Div.
Oh, I will leave it because you can check div out via their handle because I realize like our time we spend too much time rambling about zines that we like. But yeah, I think like so this was these are pictures from our first Zinefest. It was it was our biggest event, and it was like a Zinefest at Camp Kilo, which has since moved, I think. But so on the left, there's a picture of people doing like face paint and like glitter beards for each other. And this was unplanned. Just like somebody sat down with their makeup and like started doing it for other people. Below, there's some pictures of, I think these are Beverly's zines. She's a graphic designer, and she makes very bright, colorful visuals. Very fun. And then above, there's a picture of Squelch Zine's 3-meter long zine library, which is like a bunch of wire racks that they're so cute. They came in a car and then they had to unpack all of their wire racks and set it up. And it's just rows and rows of zines and some of their merchandise. And I mean, for us, like what was exciting was that we didn't like, it was at a non-drinking space, and it was at a wheelchair and like young people accessible space. So we saw like children and we saw like very young people, like secondary school age queers, and that was very exciting because I think a lot of times in Singapore the queer spaces are like 18 and up. Like there's there's not even queer bars, there's gay bars, and there's like, you know, some lesbian events, but not like dedicated spaces for younger queer people. So it was nice to see.
Yeah, I had some like I had like two like adult friends who were like 40s, 50s, and they just said they were very heartened to see that a lot of people were coming as they were, and just a lot of younger folk who, and you know, we didn't try to like censor the, you know, because a lot of our zines are like exploring sexuality and stuff, but we kind of did, you know, we just told the zinesters to, you know, be aware of this, you know, and it's really putting the individuals, like, because I think this is maybe like in reaction to how in Singapore there's a lot of the kind of like argument against like gay literature or articles or anything is because like, oh, like, but what about the children? So I think this is kind of a you know, we were trying to create a space that's not designed to be alienating to that, and it's just like, you know, we want like people and their kids to come because this is supposed to be really a day about solidarity, about love, about being who you are. Yeah,
I think we won't talk about the other events because we're out of time.
Yeah,
we'll just speed through the pictures so you can sort of see the kinds of things that we do, and then these are from like when COVID happened, we started doing like Instagram pajama parties where a different queer person came online every night to like teach us something, like how to make something, or they would do healing sessions, or just talk or do makeup, and yeah, so I think there's this whole idea of like decentralized, leaderless, just lots of queer people doing things together. And there's a lot of power in that, actually.
Yeah. There's no host. It was just online, and you're like, I think even though there's no like zine per se, I mean, there were a few zine workshops during the process, but I think we've kind of evolved away. Not just away, but like the zine is the vehicle. It's not the end goal in a way. It's supposed to be about the queer community, and what zines can do for us is kind of just like, I think like what was said earlier, it's like it's a toolbox, and that's just kind of our toolbox, but it's really like, for example, this pajama parties was a way for other people to express themselves the way they did and bring issues that are intersectional to the queer community as well. They're not necessarily just about queerness, but like fighting fat phobia or like racism. So all of these are like intersectional things that we hope, like, you know, like our platform can help other people just, you know, share what they have to say.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Sorry we ran over time.
Yeah, thank you guys.
But there we done.
We're done. Okay,
Stop.
Thank you, Chris. Maybe I can pass the time now to Kat Brogan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Well done, everybody. You've got such great attention spans. So my name is Kat Brogan. My pronouns are she, her. I am got some sort of bobbed hair. I've got a necklace on. I've got a blue top, and I'm the white lady in the room. I'm here to talk about a KL queer space, which we don't really publicize the name of. So let's just keep it all on the hush hush, okay, guys? I'm trusting you that we're in this safe space. So what I wanted to do is just start off with a little video to kind of switch things up a little bit, and just kind of to show you what kind of got in the way of our making zines. In a way, is that we set up a space, a physical space, and running that and organizing that, of course, takes lots of time. So here's a little video to sort of show you our space. You see Singapore books coming up right now. Cool. So yeah, that is our space. So it is an LGBT space in Kuala Lumpur, which is in Malaysia, and it's something that's not legal here, so that we have to kind of keep it all sort of hush hush and that sort of thing, and underground. And I want to talk to you a little bit specifically about our work with zines. So our first zine was kind of an accident, because myself and my partner, my co-founder, randomly decided, let's just do a one-off LGBT event with all LGBT performers. And I was speaking to someone who was like, I've got something I want to share, but I don't want to read it. Could you read it, or what could we do with it? And I thought, let's make a zine. Why not? My partner had helped me make a zine of some of my poetry. Since arriving in Malaysia, I had made zines before, back in 2015 and in 2011, I want to say, with my poetry stuff. I'm a spoken word poet. That's kind of my main thing. So here you can see our first zine. It was like put together really, really last minute. This was just like a painting I'd done. This is some artwork from an amazing trans woman artist based in KL. And it basically had poems and drawings and entries from our performers on the night, as well as the additional piece by the person who didn't want to perform it. So we thought it was a good way to showcase different types of queer expression that didn't lend itself to the stage. And it resulted in some beautiful things like this, which is like an imagining of a queer lesbian wedding, multiracial also. And yeah, it was good fun, and it was kind of just cobbled together with whatever we had lying around. This is my partner's band, for example, who played, and that's their CD cover. We also had work from highlighting. She had already created a zine about trans rights in Malaysia, and we kind of just borrowed it from that, because we were really trying to find ways to just bring the zine together and make it look visually interesting and not just a bunch of poets. And then the first event that we had was a really big success, and everybody asked us when we were going to do another one, so we thought that we should probably do that. And we decided to make another zine, and I really love this cover. This actually came out of, the drawing here was by one of the people who came to our first event, one of the first poets and first contributors to the zine. And then I said that I love this, and could they maybe add some people who weren't female presenting, so that we could use it, because something that was very much founded on was that it was for everybody, and it's not just a female thing or a cis male gay thing or a trans thing. It's everybody together, and also especially all the races together was really important, both in our how we program the event and what we put in our zine. So you can see here we got a little advert to get people to submit, and we actually had, way back when, then we had Marlon Tan, I think, from Singapore, submitted some things. We had some cool little comics about, this is about hookup culture. We featured, for the first time, someone who's gone on to become Malaysian Poetry Slam champion, who performed at our event for the first time on the same night. So yeah, that was our second one. And something that was important for us with this is that certainly at that time there wasn't a lot of places where people could access stories by queer people living in Malaysia, and where these were stories that people were scared to share or people couldn't access. And there had been some books that had come out about 10 years ago, but recently not much. Also, this is kind of material that's quite dangerous and potentially illegal to disseminate. So by selling it at our events, we had the site at which to sell it. The stall was there. Then in March 2017, it was our third event and also our third zine, and it was a really special one. It was a tribute to Shamira, who was a trans woman who was murdered a few weeks before, and some original artwork was created to celebrate her. This piece at the back as well was an artwork created by Veshelina Nadu, who's gone on to do so many amazing things, including a residency in Chicago earlier this year. And then there was pieces written for Shamira as well. And then this was something that we wanted to start, was having using the zine as a space for a marginalized community who is under threat, to have a space to grieve, to celebrate, to outpour, to share. And then this was quite an interesting issue, number 5, because, and actually this will be the second time that brown men who having issues with racialized dating will be brought up, to find a little theme here. One of our attendees decided they wanted to write, they wanted to research what it was like to date as a cis man, gay man in Malaysia, and if other people had experienced racial rejection on dating apps. And we had so many people who actually contributed to that and who really appreciated the opportunity to be able to speak about it and speak to their experiences, even though it was just a small zine and whatever. We actually got so many respondents. It was really overwhelming in many ways. So that was a good issue. And a lot of times what we'd end up doing is just literally taking random things. Like this image, for example, was actually painted on my partner's friend's wall, and there was a photo of it, and then we just ran it through Photoshop and stuck it in to kind of fill that. People did different drawings, mixing up text and sketches, quite like this one, the kind of reimagining, like queering of a Malaysian aesthetic, again by Vesha. So, oh yes, that was interesting too, because after this we changed our name because our name was decided to be too obvious, and there had been a very heightened security threat at that time. So we decided to change our name. Skipping ahead to September, this is a great example of when we find our covers. Actually, this was birthday card to my partner. And there you go, there's me, that's my partner. And we recycled the birthday card for the zine cover. This one had some quite nice designs. Here I took some text from other people's poems and then added my own artwork, this kind of thing. How to sauna. So that was quite a fun one. All right, and then in October we had our first birthday, so we had a happy birthday edition, and what we did with this was actually contact different queer LGBT businesses and ask them if they would like to advertise, although we didn't charge them, and we put that in the zine as a way to highlight what queer people are doing in this country and direct the community towards using their money with queer people. So, and then skipping ahead to May, this was actually our May 2018, this was our last zine, and I love this cover, I thought it was great, and we had a very nice design element. Besha did that for us as well, and this kind of marked the beginning of the end, because what we did was we set up our first physical space, which was actually called Pink Hibiscus, and it was named after this piece of writing by a trans woman in KL, and this piece of writing actually came out of a workshop by Isang, who's been mentioned earlier, and he was up doing a workshop in KL. He performed at our event. So we have quite a lot of crossover between here and Singapore, and I've been down to Singapore to perform as well. So you can just see some pictures of our space that we opened in April 2018. It was like super tiny. It was in Zhongshan building, which is a pretty awesome creative space, kind of artist hub in KL. If you're ever here, if we're ever allowed to travel anywhere ever again, to check it out. And then I just thought I would finish off with a little bit of future stuff. So we haven't really been doing a lot of things with zines recently. I guess there were a few different things, like having the space meant that we didn't have the same time to do for the zines. Also, we find that like we'd print them and then sometimes people wouldn't buy them, and then it got disheartening, and then we had a lot of zines. And then we didn't really have anywhere else to sell them apart from our monthly events. So I think distribution is kind of an issue. We still stock them at our space so people can still look at them. They're sort of getting to the point now where it's a bit more of an archive, that they're not like, this is the only copy of Notes 2, for example. So, but what we are doing is we recently got some funding from an organization called Frida, that is a feminist and youth funder with they do like to support LGBT stuff, it would seem. So we're going to be running a writer workshop series. I'm super excited because I just confirmed today that we're going to get Mary Jean Chan, who is originally from Hong Kong, and they recently won the 2020 Forward Prize for their debut novel, their debut poetry collection, sorry, which is all about coming out and trying to repair the relationship with their mother. So that's really interesting, as well as having some local poets and writers and some poets from Singapore as well. You probably recognize Stephanie Chan / Dogfoot and Marilyn Tan there as well. So hopefully that's what's going to happen in the future, and that will be our next steps to try and keep creating zines, and I think also cultivating queer voices in Kuala Lumpur. So yeah, there you go. And if anybody wants to look at the Prezi, I just dropped the link in the chat.
Thank you, Kat. Yes, and thanks, Worms and Joy from Queer Zinefest as well. So now I think we move on to the Q&A section of the talk. maybe I think because Kat might need to leave soon for another event. Are there any questions directed specifically to Kat and the space that she's involved with? Maybe anyone from the panel would like to ask a question, or
otherwise I'll do what I do with my students and be like, okay, I'm going to unmute you. You have to ask a question. I don't think that kind of e-meeting etiquette works with adults, though. Yeah, also if people want to question the chat, that's great.
So I saw in the video of the sort of like the tour of the space and stuff, there was like some kind of membership situation. So is it like people sort of pay a membership or something and they're part of a kind of collective?
Yep. So I mean, people can be part of it without paying the membership fee or whatever. And the membership, we have like a monthly membership fee for people to use the space. So it's kind of a nominal amount. It's just 30 ringgit, which is like $10, which is like a cappuccino for you guys, and but slightly more Malaysia. And it means that people can use the space, use the internet, hang out, do meetings, co-working, that kind of thing. And then we have events as well throughout the month. We have like a queer to queer support group. We have an art jam next week. We've got Muay Thai tomorrow. So we have all sorts of stuff that happens in the space. We have film screenings, and we urge the people themselves to organize whatever it is that they want to organize.
Maybe I have a general question. It's very interesting to see these sort of publication practices that runs between the three cities that we're covering, and also how there are so many different practices that express politics in so many different ways and with and through different affects. A lot of it touches on very personal level, on issues and stories that are very personal as well. Touching on things like grief and loss and mourning. So I guess my question is, I'm interested in circuits of distribution, circulation, dissemination, and how are your zines or your publications usually disseminated? Do you control the dissemination? And yeah, and why do you choose to make certain decisions, if any, about distribution?
Does anyone want to go first, or?
Yes, please go first.
So what we do is we sell it at our events. So we have like, before COVID, we had a monthly event that usually had around 150 people. And we'd sell it there. And also we have it available at our space. We did send it down to Queer Zinefest, actually. Yeah, so it was good. And we sold some, because about a year later, we got like $100 back. Recycled into buying more queer books in Singapore. So yeah, we would like to be able to distribute them more, but a lot of it is to do with a kind of, we prioritize the safety of our community above everything else. That's kind of the most important thing for us. We did sell them a bit at a thing called Art for Grabs, which is a sort of makers fair in Kuala Lumpur. So yeah. But we're thinking about whether we make them available online. But it means that we'd have to do a bit of a kind of back catalog to make sure that whoever contributed gives their consent to share it online, and then we'd have to figure out how we would want it presented, like, you know, does it look nice? Can you click through it? I think that's quite important, rather than it just sort of being text like that.
What about the Hong Kong side? Questions of distribution.
We actually have some independent bookshop can do the distribution. The thing is, most of the main bookshops in Hong Kong are controlled by the government. Actually, they are the big boss behind the bookshops. That's reported on the news. So people are very aware of what they buy. People are more. Some of the people are very active to buy stuff from the independent bookshop, and and that's why we still sell quite well. And during the COVID time, the distribution run like online, and people will do the pre-order, so we can have the capital before the we print, and also ensure that we don't print too much and don't keep too many extra copies at home. And so it works quite well. And many authors or independent publisher, they follow this procedure. And actually, we survive even now. Most of the public places are closed, and no events are on the street or everywhere.
And everyone don't depend on their publishing to sustain. We have other survival hustles.
Yeah. So I am very new to this, so I don't have much experience in terms of distribution and stuff, but I have, like I said in the presentation, I've given away a lot of free copies to whoever wanted it. I have not tried to censor. If somebody asks for it, like from anywhere in the world, if they ask for it, I've given it to them. And also, like Siu Ding said, I print it based on the request. I don't like pre-print it. I have a very small printer at my house, and I make everything by myself. I cut it, make it, and put it together and send it wherever. The idea is to share the message of what was happening in Hong Kong. It is not, and like Sam said, this is not to make money, or this is not my source of income. So I am more interested in sharing or trying to be some kind of a help to improve the situation in any way I can. I don't know how much of an impact it makes or it doesn't, but it's important to do something if you feel strongly about it.
How do you distribute?
So distribution for Salty Wet in particular is sort of different between places. So Inpatient Press, which is the publisher that published it and prints it, does it in New York. And the way that it was first distributed was actually through these newspaper boxes in front of the Whitney Museum, I believe. And so people were just basically putting coins in the newspaper box, as you could see in New York, and then they would pull them out. But it's also available at independent bookshops like Printed Matter or Blue Stockings. That's another one. Here in Hong Kong, I mean, I've always, one of the things that I went to school for, I'm a student of history, so what my advisor back in college was actually a person who specialized on print culture and censorship and civic engagement through print culture. So I've always been quite aware of the history of how threatening print culture is in general. So even in Salty Wet, I wrote a part of it where I basically mapped out what I think the distribution plan is. And, I have copies where I live, and people DM me on Instagram and ask for them, and I give it to them. I like meet up with them, and we exchange. And of course, again, echoing everyone here, you know, you don't go into zine making to make money. You go into zine making because you feel that there is some connection and solidarity that needs to be made. And I'm also really grateful to Asia Art Archive for also putting it available on their archives to look at digitally, because also Salty Wet exists kind of as in some ways, in my mind, in its ideal form as a PDF. So it's important for me as an immaterial document too.
Also, people are now trying to do the Kickstarter, from Kickstarter, so they can do zine publishing more and also more sustainable. They will open how the money will go. So they will take some part of the donation or the fund from the public, and then they will show the cost. And sometimes they will also do the donation to support other group for protester, or also some journalists, writers or artists. So it's also worked quite well. Even though we can a lot of variety to show the possibility of publishing in protest, like about the protest for music, some the land sculpture on the street is like the roadblocks kind of stuff. So if you search for the scene or the book about the protest, is a lot in Hong Kong online, or some people will donate a lot of money, but they don't really like but they don't want, but they don't need. Some of the people can take it for free. So it is kind of like people try to support protesting in many different ways.
Thank you.
I want to add one point. I want to add one point to this is that, like Tiffany mentioned, Asia Archive, how they kind of support and they collect all this material and have it available for people, or for anybody to have access to. Even independent or co-ops like Zine Coop in Hong Kong, or Queer Zinefest in Singapore, or even whatever work Catherine is doing. All of these organizations also are very helpful in kind of spreading the word for independent publishers, you know, because they have a wider reach compared to what's, like, for example, for me, I've just started, and if it wasn't for Asia Archive and Zine, probably I may not have been able to publish so much. So I think that is also very valuable in how these organizations help.
Yep. So maybe just speaking.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to run. I have to go because there are physical events happening in Kuala Lumpur. So yes.
Thank you so much.
I got it.
Thank you.
Sorry that I couldn't myself, but it was so lovely to be part of this, and thank you so much for having us. And it is super hard to find out about what we do, so I've dropped a contact form in the chat and also a link to basically the only thing publicly available on the internet about what we do. So if you do know people here in Kuala Lumpur, you know, queers who want to collaborate in the region, please do send, get in touch and tell them about us, because we really rely on word of mouth to be able to collaborate. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mwah. That's a lot.
Yes. Do we have questions from the audience? If you feel uncomfortable, you can type it as well. And thanks for listening for so long and so many people.
Or maybe would anyone from the panel like to ask a question to each of the panelists? Yeah.
Well, I want to ask Worms, how did Love and Soap come about?
The what?
Love and Soap.
You have you sign off as Love and Soap, right? That's really cool.
Actually, I think it's something that I saw Renee, maybe she's on this chat. So hello.
Hi, Renee.
Renee from Singapore Art Book Fair, like at the start of COVID, because we were supposed to collaborate with Singapore Fair we were gonna, oh, are we frozen? No. Oh, we were supposed to organize their zine room because they were doing like a queer zine room, but then COVID happened. This is a lot of backstory for a very short story, but like she signed off the email Love and Soap because, oh, no, not the email. It's on the Instagram. It's on the Singapore Art Book Fair Instagram. Like they signed off with like Love and Soap, and I was like, that is so cute and appropriate. So I stole it.
Very good. Yeah.
So it is not my invention.
Oh.
It's
It's cool language. Yeah.
It's a collaboration.
Also, one more thing, Marcus. I think after I presented all the material, I feel it can be a little sensitive. Some of the clips that were there in it. So do we have to consider share, or would you be concerned about that?
Right. So this session will be shared online.
Yeah.
But also, I guess I have a follow-up question, maybe directed to the different panelists, focusing more on the materiality of the zines, on why we still choose to publish on paper and still choose to do photocopies. I know that a lot of you, for example, Tiffany with Salty Wet, it's also there's also a PDF version available of your zine. So and a lot of us are also working with like social media or text messaging to put in our zines. So why is there a conscious choice to still use printed matter in your different practices?
I think. Oh, okay. Yes.
My answer is very simple because I love print material. I think it has a lot of heart and soul. Compared to digital, of course, digital is great because it helps you to spread faster and wider. But there is some tactile quality to print and to paper that is very hard to achieve in digital. So that's the reason I do print.
For me, doing zine is like writing diary. I feel there is a distance that if I do it just digital and haven't printed out. So because every time when you do it on InDesign or digital file, I don't know why I always miss something. And if I print it out and flip it over, I can find some mistake or something I would like to change. And also I can feel how better. I just maybe I'm quite old-fashioned. So, yeah.
I guess I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum because so much of my work is like, immaterial in the sense that, film-based or performance stuff, or the fact that Salty Wet is a PDF. So, but the way in which Salty Wet exists also as a paper, as a print publication, also has the joke of like, like when I'm reading it, it looks like I'm reading a softcore porn magazine. And I've had people who've had to like hide their Salty Wets when they're like, oh, my in-laws are coming. I don't want my in-laws to like mistake this for like an actual, softcore porn magazine. So in that way, it sort of functions as a joke. But also it puts me in conversation with other zine makers, to be able to be in art book fairs with other people, or to be alongside other books and printed matter, for example, or Asia Art Archive. I think zine making is so much this community, generative community, and also political work or like mutual aid work is also running alongside, sometimes inside of the zine making practice, but sometimes outside of it or like concurrent. So participation and, you know, in civic action, and then also participation as well, and just like expressions, those modalities like walking together, I think is really important. And so it's really exciting to like connect in this way too. For the very act of printing is to join a club, you know.
Actually, this is the first time I meet them. I have her scene, and I also read the scene, but this is the first time I see them in person.
And during the intermission, we were all like basically you know, having like a fan moment over each other. So yeah.
Can I quickly add one more thing? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for Queer Zinefest. Yes, I like how kinship is really important in the way you form communities, and you guys were very comfortable with each other, and like I wanna like part of collaboration is getting along with who you get along with. So I want you guys to say more on that process. And, yeah. I want that compliment. Yeah.
The weird thing is that something
organizing becomes one. Like you guys integrated it very, very well. So,
yeah, it's funny because I think we have to like schedule times where we meet each other, and it's not about Queer Zinefest. It just becomes like, I think like Worms likes to call it their baby. I think it kind of feels like it is just that like it's just kind of something we like doing, and like Queer Zinefest is maybe just like the name stand in for what we are both passionate about, which is helping other queer people feel accepted and creating work, which is then just, it's a Queer Zinefest, and we like organizing, we like bringing people together. So Queer Zinefest and like organization is just the name of what we like talking about when we have nothing to talk about.
And I think there's also something healing about the process of organizing. I think organizing can be really draining, but we're super lucky in that
it's actually just like
that like I guess we have a space where we can do things at our own pace, sort of, and we're allowed to rest because it's just us, you know. And I think also like the pressure has kind of come off us a little bit, because I know, like, I don't know about you, but like when we did the very first one, we felt like a lot of pressure to keep up that scale with the second one, which hasn't even happened yet. And people were asking, like, can you do the next one like next month? Like, can you do this like every year? And we knew that like it was not in our capacity to do that much. But from 2018 to now, I think more small, like us, kind of like collectives have popped up, and they do similar things, and they kind of filled that gap. And so in that sense, I think, I think the kinship is not just between us also, but it's also knowing that there's other people there doing the same work as us, and nobody needs to have a monopoly on like this space. But we're lucky that like we get along.
It's true, I think it's like when they say like it's a choir, and like when one person needs to stop to breathe, the rest can take over.
That's true.
So I think whenever someone's like, hey, when's the next Queer Zinefest? And then you're like, well, you can join us and come and do it with us, so it's faster. So it's like, expand our circle.
So it's really just the university very good to us.
Right. We have one more question, one last question, maybe from Renee. And she asked, how has the pandemic affected, if at all, your different publishing practices?
Like I mentioned in the presentation that since the time I started making zines, it's fun. So this pandemic, in fact, gave me a reason to make a zine about for frontline workers and the essential frontline first responders and essential workers. And I made a zine which probably you can gift it to them as a thank you. So I'm trying to use whatever subject comes my way and work with that. So yeah, it is difficult to kind of go out and give it, but because of the online platform, I can have it on my online shop, and so if somebody wants to buy it, you can use it.
COVID affect your
the only all the event is cancelled, and so this is the main part of the effect. And but we try to distribute the scene or the book online, and now we will do the pre-order. So for the fund, for the money, we kind of are okay, but actually we all miss the time we can spend together. So we all are waiting for the COVID will be over, and then we can resume all the events, because I think many people really miss the time to be, together. Yeah.
Has COVID, but you are social media. No,
Yeah,
even
no.
more social media.
all of the things that I do are so like remote based, and even Salty Wet is about the politics of the far away. So even my organizing and mutual aid, I've been sending masks to New York from Hong Kong. Like even that is, all remote working, WhatsApp, like all, so no, it hasn't changed. It's even actually created a different way in which I'm participating in both the audience and also as a speaker, I think, in other places that I wouldn't necessarily normally have that interaction with, like, artists in Berlin or like in New York. I don't think that they would have as much like appetite for what's going on here if it wasn't for the fact that they're just constantly looking at their phones wherever the transmission is coming from, like in their city or from Hong Kong. So.
Queer Zinefest, you do sleepovers?
We basically pivoted from because we were supposed to organize our major Queer Zinefest for like the end of the year, but that was shelved.
And also Singapore Art Book Fair in June. It was going to be a very busy year for us.
Yeah, we were planning for 2020 to be like the year that we kind of restart our practices, because Worms is also like overseas like for school, so like this is when like they're actually in town, but then we ended up kind of being like our first response to when COVID hit was like, but what about all our queer babies and our queer community who might be in lockdown and not being affirmed, and they're not in potentially from not being safe spaces to not just just feeling like they're isolated from the community. So because we do know that kind of like our outreach for like our socials and the people who follow us are maybe those who are like already are like fighting teen angst. You already want to get away from your parents and you're also queer. So we oh my god, nightmare. So like you would just want to we just wanted, our first instinct was like, what is the most budget way to, not budget, like budget was even a thing, but I think we operate within our means. Yeah, we were like, let's go fast. And like the good thing about, I guess, our collaboration, we don't really think too hard about things. They usually come pretty naturally. So that's lucky, I guess. But like we, like the Instagram lives were the first thing we were like, okay, we're going to show ourselves like for the first week, and then use that to build traction and start inviting our friends and anybody who wanted to contribute. And like, yeah, so it was very zine for like maybe like the first week, and then we had like one of our musician friends come on who was also queer, and then we were just showing how to make zines, like mental health and zines. But then it kind of evolved into more like even talk pieces. Some people are just like, life in COVID, like what's it like? And it's every hour at 8 o'clock, so it's for an hour at 8 o'clock every weekday. So there's a routine that you can come back into. You're feeling kind of like however we're feeling, like 8 o'clock when Queer Zinefest is going to be on. And we would like this for the whole circuit breaker, which is kind of Singapore's equivalent of like a mini lockdown. And then when it stopped, we were just like, all right, now everybody can hang out in groups of 5. Like, our work here is done for now. Yeah.
But it was really nice because in some ways, like the Instagram live was so accessible. I think like with physical events, like, there are so many accessibility roadblocks, whether it's like, even if the space is like perfect, there will be people who like don't want to leave the house or don't want to be around people, and even if you do things like having a quiet hour, like there, it's a physical space, and that comes with with challenges. And I think being online meant that we met a lot of queer people that we'd never met before. Were suddenly okay with like coming into this community, and it was kind of like a very like low commitment way of like being like, hey, I'm out here, I'm also queer. And then we started like a Discord channel also for like queer Singaporeans, and that's very cute because we can see them all talking.
Yeah, they were like games, showing pictures of their cats. We just basically opened it and like kind of posted and like low-key moderate just to make sure like nothing shady or bad is like happening and like our safety of the community. So there was always a moderator with someone from outside of our like organizing team. I mean, as in someone from the organizing team making sure that the person posting would be okay. Yeah.
So it was very cute. We found more queer people.
Yeah, so that's like an interesting, I guess, parallel to like the printing process, because it's like I think our method of organization was like it is evolving and it's changing, but I think we do hold a lot of preciousness with like the physical space and the printed matter. I think because it's very healing to have like tactility both for zines and being around people. So I think that's where they kind of mesh together as well. Yeah.
So I think with that, I'm looking at the time, and we would have to close this session.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been so nice to connect everyone and to hear about everyone's practices. The next event with Softball Stats is happening 12th September, but also we are having the Beyond Repair programs. That starts from August all the way to February, end of August all the way to February. So yes, speakers, how could people contact you if they like to contact you, or if you want to be contacted?
Our website. It's Softly Press.
That's softdpress@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And this is the
website.
See the book I have.
Okay.
Do you want to be contacted? You can tell me.
People I guess can just reach out to me on Instagram. I feel like that's probably the easiest. It's kind of like a weird. I'll type it in. It's a little bit. I'll type it into the comments.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. We can all write our contact.
Yeah, I'm available on Instagram as Pop and Zebra, and also have a website by the same name, popandzebra.com. Yep.
Okay.
I actually wrote this wrong.
Don't. That's someone else.
It's just.
And Queer Zinefest is
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Queer Zinefest on Instagram. Okay. Yes, thank you everyone for joining our meeting.
Thank you everyone for listening and gathering.
Thank you, Marcus.
Nice meeting everyone.
Thank you, Sam.
Enjoy so cute. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. There.